They definitely have a great core, Alex, as both of you have said, but they do have a couple of holes, as Sam was saying, and particularly one that Julian Alvarez would fit so perfectly well. And we'll stick a pin there because we talked about it a little bit yesterday on ESPN FC. Just the fact that Julian Alvarez himself has made it known during the World Cup that he does want to leave. He says Atletico Madrid know his stance. They know that he does want to leave. And of course, Barcelona want him. So what is the deal there? How does this saga end? Because Atleti, as much as they can thrive in toxicity, I don't think they want it from inside their dressing room.
Yeah, and just to defend my take, by the way, from Sam there, what I would say is, look, I think Barca are great, but I think Real Madrid, I think they'll improve. And I think despite being a complete mess in many ways, last season, the gap wasn't vast in terms of points. And so I think a bit of an improvement from Madrid. I think they've brought in some brilliant players. I think it'll be really tight and Madrid might have enough to pip them. But to come back to your question, Alexis, the Julian situation has gotten quite toxic and has the potential to get even more toxic. Atletico Madrid deeply unhappy with the way that Barcelona have conducted themselves, going as far as to report the matter to the football authorities in terms of the way that Barca have gone about this. What Julian said during the World Cup felt like another step in a process, in a plan. When you're a club that's interested in a player, you need the player at some point to come out and speak publicly. Julian came out and said, I want to fulfill my dream. And he didn't complete that sentence. He didn't go say at Barca, but we all know that the answer is Barca. The question is, have Atleti been annoyed so much by the way Barca have gone about this that they are absolutely, they will refuse. This has been their stance so far. Let's see if they follow through on it. They will refuse to do business with Barcelona and will hold out and will be determined to if he does go, that he goes anywhere else except Barcelona. The loss of Robert Lewandowski, of course, a great player, one of the great forwards of the 21st century, a player who had seen diminishing returns in terms of what he could do on the field. Sam mentioned Varane, who, for a lot of last season had basically replaced Lewandowski as Barca's first choice centre forward, had some good spells, had some not some good spells. There's a lot of fans are unconvinced by him, and Sam mentions how inconsistent he is in front of goal. Lewandowski will be missed, but maybe not that much. But of course, the eye-catching thing without Julian so far is that they haven't brought in a direct replacement in terms of a centre forward. And, Lewandowski, despite his limitations at his age, still scored, a really decent proportion of goals last season.
Yeah, and I mean, someone who else was amongst the goals too last season was Marcus Rashford. And I mean, only just moments ago, he's posted to his social media, Sam, his official goodbye to Barcelona and thanking him. This, of course, was I don't want to say a saga, but I think some were left surprised that Barcelona didn't hang on to him. So if we're looking at it from the Marcus Rashford perspective, to almost go back to Manchester United now, what do you see happening there? What does Marcus need to thrive? Because for the first time in a long time, we started to see why he was one of the highly touted players in England.
Yes, I feel for Marcus Rashford here. I think he thought he was going to be sticking around in Catalonia for a long time yet, and it wasn't just going to be such a short flyby spell. And the fact is that him returning to Manchester United at this stage of his career, it's really awkward. It's really awkward, and it's really difficult because I think everyone thought that chapter was closed. I'm talking about Marcus. I'm talking about Manchester United. I'm talking about pretty much all their fans too. Every Manchester United fan that I've spoken to about this is just like, no, it's not right. It's not right. He can't, he's gone, right? Like, in their minds, he had gone. And Rashford, towards the start of the summer, when it became clear that Barcelona weren't going to exercise the opportunity there was still potentially on the table for them to negotiate a cheaper fee at that stage. Seems like that's not going to happen now. I think Rashford said, well, if I can't achieve a move to a different European club, then I don't want to play for a different English one. I'm going to see out my contract. And everyone kind of went, what? Because Manchester United were busy looking in the winger market. They'd been linked to Crescencio Somerville. They'd been linked to Iliman and Tighe. They'd started moving Patrick Dorgu up to the flank. He'd done really well for Carrick in a short spell before getting injured on the left flank. All of a sudden, all the plans sort of need to change. Do Man United need to move Dorgu back to left back? And or do they need to move him forward and Rashford's going to be there? And it's just so strange and so awkward. So from Rashford's perspective, I hope he finds another move. If he hasn't managed to find a move on the continent by mid-August, maybe it's worth softening his stance and looking at other Premier League clubs. I mean, he was very good on loan at Aston Villa in the 6 months leading up to the loan to Barcelona. That would have been very, very good for him, and that might have to happen again. But it's just chaos. And from Barca's perspective, I question where it leaves them. And my question to you guys there is, if it's not Julian Alvarez, then who is it? Because it's certainly not Rashford.
Alex, you want to take a crack at that?
Well, they've got to replace those goals. I mean, I mentioned, I think Lewandowski scored 14 goals in the league last season. Rashford scored 8 goals in the league. And so you're losing both of those players. Yes, their highest scorers were Varane and Lamine and Rafinha. And between those 3 players, you know, all 3 of those should be getting into double figures. If Varane, doesn't move on elsewhere as well. But that's a lot of goals to replace. And, Gordon and Adeyemi, can they replace those goals between them? Between them scoring 22 goals in the league this season, I'm not sure. Maybe they can. It'd be a really good return if they can. But if not, like I say, those goals will be an issue.
Yeah, those goals will definitely be an issue. I thought that Sam was the perfect person to ask that Rashford question too, just because the shirt is right behind you. And so is Jack Grealish, somebody else who may need to find another club soon. But we won't get into that right now. Let's continue talking about Barcelona, specifically about the star boy, the main man, and a young man he is indeed. Lamine Yamal didn't have the World Cup in terms of goals that many would have wanted him to, Alex, but he's still somebody that when you think Barcelona, you think him now. It's hard to believe that he's still just 19 years old, over 13,000 minutes already played, almost 200 matches, and now he is a world champion. So can he become the undisputed best player in the world at the rate he's going?
Yes, I think he can. And I think he'll be stronger for the challenging season he had last year. It was tough for him last year. He had this groin problem. It was ongoing. It had to be managed. He had to be rested. He was left out for long periods. When he was back, he wasn't necessarily at his best. We saw that with the injury as well going into the World Cup, where he came in for Spain gradually, a few minutes in the first game, a bit more in the next game. The coach De La Fuente was sort of taking it very, very slowly with him. Even when he was back and playing 90 minutes, you could see that he wasn't at his best. And that sort of summed up his season in some ways. Like I say, it was a bit of a struggle in terms of his fitness. What we still saw is what an extraordinary talent he is and how important he is to Barcelona, and how when he is at his best, no one else can really get close to him. So, like I said, I think he'll be a stronger and better player for what he had to deal with last season. And I think that this year, if he can put that behind him, then the sky's the limit, really. Because if he can get through a season this time fully fit, then what can he do? Again, I talk about numbers. You could be he should be aiming for 30 plus goals and assists together for Barca in the league.
Sam, we're talking about a future GOAT, aren't we?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think he's the best player that I've ever seen at the age of 16, 17 and 18. So might as well just carry it on, be the best player at 19, best player at 20, best player at 21. Yeah. Look, I've got to say the minutes total, it does scare me a little bit, right? He's already had a couple of problems now. So the groin injury that Alex mentioned, and I believe that the one before the World Cup, did he tear his hamstring taking a penalty towards the end of the season? Is that what happened, or was that the continuation of the groin? But it was
it was either winning a penalty and then taking. I'm not sure exactly. It was around a penalty kick for sure.
Yeah, it was not nice. And no, I don't think we're anywhere near the point here where we're calling him injury prone or anything like that. Let's not be silly. But when you rack up that many minutes, over 10,000 minutes by the age of 19, it does change the dates and the timelines on your career ever so slightly, I would argue. And that comparison that popped up during the World Cup, where Messi at Lamine Yamal's age had played like 1/6 of the minutes, and we're looking at Messi at 39, still marveling. And you do start to wonder about Yamal and where the peak comes and where the drop-off comes. Does it change? Do the goalposts shift in terms of age? So that's not a problem for 19, 20, 21. Okay, we're not going to be worrying about that for a long time. But I want to watch Lamine Yamal play football for 15 more years minimum. So if that's the case, we might need to take a little bit of care of him. However, I understand that from Barca's perspective, where the need is to win every single game, every single week, and win every single trophy, how can you possibly not utilise the best young attacker in the world? So it's one of those tug of wars in football that we all face. I just hope that at some point in the next couple of years, Barca can find a way to give him a bit more of a rest and try to mediate his career a little bit more, so we can just enjoy a bit more of him.
Yeah, Alex, how much of a concern is that over in Spain and, of course, Catalonia as well? Because Barcelona relying on their youngsters from La Masia as well is nothing new. But we also saw how when you don't manage minutes properly, for example, in the Pedri situation, you can suffer the consequences. So how much of a concern can that be?
Yeah, I think Hansi Flick and his staff are aware of this, and there's been that conversation, especially last season, between club and country. Right, we saw that during the season where there was a bit of tension, a bit of back and forth between Barca and Spain in terms of, Lamine missed a couple of international games because Barca felt like it was in his interest not to go, and like I said, there was a bit of a clash there. Yeah, of course, it's something to be aware of. But just to go back to, Barca's, I mean, Sam talks about sort of the longer term prospects. Look at the spine. When you look at the spine of this Barcelona team and you look at Joan Garcia in goal, Koulibaly at the back, Pedri in midfield, you mentioned, and then Lamine in the forward line. I mean, you've got a generational player, a generational talent in each of the lines of the team, and they are there for the long haul as well. If let's hope, touch wood, they stay fit and they stay at their best. Of course, Pedri, we didn't see the best of at the World Cup. He lost his place in the Spain team at the World Cup, it was unthinkable going into the tournament. I was in one of our predictions we did, I was talking about Pedri as a potential player of the tournament. And I mean, look, he ended up not being in the starting 11 when available for Spain, when the World Cup final came around, which no one would have predicted. So that's one to watch. I think he was exhausted, Pedri, after a really, really good season, but a long season for Barca. I think it was as simple as that. I think he was tired. And let's hope he's had a chance to rest now and come back stronger. But yeah, the big picture for Barca, like I say, with that group of best in the world young talents right the way through the team is really positive.
Yeah, I think it was both you and I think it was Stuart Robson that both predicted Pedri as your player of the tournament. You got the team right, but probably just not quite the player. All right, let's do some quick predictions now for Barcelona as we title bow on their season preview. I think you guys have already answered this first one, but we're going to let you do it again just in case Sam bullied you, Alex, into, after going around in circles. Can Barcelona once again beat Real Madrid to the La Liga title? Alex?
I'm going to double down. It's sent me the other way. No, like I said, I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be tight because I do see. Look, we're talking Barca, not Madrid, but look, Mourinho wasn't my pick, wasn't my guy for Real Madrid. But like I say, I think that the margin for improvement in that Madrid team is sizable, especially with the players that they bring in, especially if they bring in Rodri with the other names, and so I think they'll improve. And so Barca, if they maintain the level that they've been at, I think that would see a real neck and neck title race that might be decided in the Clásicos, let's say. Now, in the last couple of years in the Clásicos, Barca have massively had the edge over Real Madrid. We've seen some hammerings for Barca against Madrid in La Liga, in the Cup, in the Super Cup. It's been really one-sided. It's been kind of borderline humiliating for Madrid at times in terms of those clashes in the Clásico. I'm not sure if we'll see that. Like I said, I think it'll be much, much tighter this time. I'm going to stick with my prediction. I'm going to stick with Real Madrid for champions, but that doesn't mean that I think there'll be, I'm talking about a point or two, gap between the two coming into the season.
All right. We almost had him, Sam. What about you?
Yeah, I'll stick with Barca. I think I'll continue to believe in the core. Look, these Barca players that have just gone and won the World Cup, neither are mine. There's 8 of them. I mean, the place they must be in mentally right now, on top of the world, literally. And they're all still growing. They're all still getting better. So I've got every reason to believe in those players and the ones surrounding them. Alex is bang on to highlight the fact that Joan Garcia not only had a great first season, but should just keep getting better and better. It may not be that long until we say that he is the best goalkeeper in the world, and don't really argue too much about it. He could be that good. So there's a lot to like here. And I appreciate and I respect the fact that Mourinho is a quality manager, and Real Madrid have done some very, very good work, some very aggressive work in the window. But that they've still got to fit 5-6 new pieces together. That doesn't always land. It doesn't always fit. There can be some teething problems. What teething problems can you expect from Barcelona? It's a machine. So I give them the edge.
All right. Well, you're giving them the edge to win the La Liga title, something that they have done. But one thing that we do know, many would say Lamine Yamal would deserve, is the Champions League. Alex, this is some place that they've been falling short in, no matter who they've had, despite Lamine Yamal's magic, even when Robert Lewandowski was scoring goals, etc., etc. So Is this now a Champions League winning squad?
It's the next step, and it kind of has to be, doesn't it? When you've won the league in back-to-back seasons, yes, you want to do it again, but the next big step, and what Barca fans want, of course, is the Champions League. And like I mentioned earlier, it felt like in 2 years ago they were closer than they were last year. You know, 2 years ago you could maybe make a case. I think you could definitely make a case they were the most exciting team in Europe. In the end, they just fell short. And like I say, last year it didn't feel like they were quite there in the the PSG bracket or even the Arsenal bracket. It's difficult to say because the competition is there. You know, I think it will be there again from PSG. I think it will be there again from the Premier League teams. It will be there again from Bayern. I'd put them among the teams that potentially, yeah, sure. Like when you talk about the players that we've talked about in the key positions, and they're getting better, their age profile, where they are right now, where they could be in a year's time. They're a team that could win the Champions League. But of course, like I say, the competition is pretty fierce. Competition
is fierce indeed. Sam?
I agree with Alex. Let's put it that bluntly.
Wow.
Because, well, I mean, hey, he's nailed it. I mean, there's a cluster of 5 or 6 teams that are capable of winning this tournament. Can they go all the way? Depends on a few things. And luck plays a big part in the Champions League. I'll say that till the cows come home. Luck plays a part one way or another. You can get very unlucky in the Champions League knockouts, and you can go out in a way that you probably shouldn't. And so it could happen to anybody. It could happen to PSG next year as they try to make it a three-peat. We'll have to wait and see. But look, they've got the talent for sure. They've got the generational talent through the lines, as Alex puts it. So they're in that conversation without a doubt, and they'll be stronger this year than they were last year for sure in the European stage.